All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to our webinar. Today, we will be discussing how ransomware attacks local governments and how to protect against those attacks. My name is Devin Myers. I'm an account executive here with Quorum, and I'll be your moderator for today. Before we start, just a few housekeeping items. You were automatically muted upon entry, so if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please enter them into the question box you'll find on your GoToMeeting link there. We will answer them at the end of the session, and we will follow up with you directly should we run out of time. Joining me today is Bryce Harward, Senior Vice President of R&D at Caliber Public Safety. Bryce has over 15 years of software development experience and over 10 years leading software development teams. After Bryce, we will be joined by special guest speaker, Deputy Jeff Fox of the Vigo County Sheriff's Office, who will give a firsthand ransomware experience. Finally, we have Gabe Gambill, VP of Product for Quorum, rounding out the presentation. Gabe has over 20 years of experience working in IT and network administration, with the last 10 plus years in leadership position. Today's webinar will be recorded and the link will be available after today's call. Please reach out to the Caliber customer success team or myself if you would like to receive that link. With that said, I will hand it over to Bryce to begin the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Devin, and good afternoon, everyone. We appreciate you attending our webinar on ransomware. I'll start by introducing what ransomware is and why we believe it is important that you take action to protect your organizations. Sorry about that. So, as far as what ransomware is, fundamentally, it's an extortion technique. It uses encryption to hold hostage your computer systems and data, demanding payment in order to restore access. It's noteworthy that it does not require theft of information. Rather, it is locked in place. Ransomware used to be a threat primarily to individual computers or workstations, and can be mitigated that way through antivirus or anti-malware solutions, as well as good backup practices. However, attackers are increasingly using ransomware to attack entire organizations instead. More effort is involved, but the payoff is much greater. Oftentimes, the ransomware specifically targets the most critical servers and backups. So why do we think you need to be concerned about ransomware? Well, in the past 10 months, 140 local governments, police stations, and hospitals have been held hostage by ransomware attacks. Additionally, ransomware attacks on local government in 2019 are up 65% as compared to 2018. And sources suggest that there are an even greater number of unreported incidents. Furthermore, local government organizations are the intended victims of nearly 2/3 of all ransomware attacks. Why is this? Well, we know that local governments have a mix of new and older technology, which can be difficult to secure. Also, IT budgets are often constrained. But perhaps most importantly, the more mission critical the information and the systems, the greater the impact of a disruption would be, and therefore a greater likelihood that the ransom will be paid. We believe it is no longer a question of if you'll be hit by ransomware, but when, and that no organization is immune. So when faced with ransomware, you have a choice to pay the ransom or not. Obviously, the FBI recommends against paying the ransom, but many times the costs of lost data, replacing, reinstalling systems, the disruption to your business can greatly exceed the amount of the ransom. Additionally, cyber insurance makes it much easier to pay the ransom. To illustrate, I've highlighted a few specific incidents from 2019. On the left, we have an early 2019 example of an agency that refused to pay the ransom and the resulting financial impact of over $18 million. Partly in response to that example and the rise of cyber insurance, attackers are significantly increasing the ransom amounts. On the right, we have two very recent examples where the agencies paid ransoms of $485,000 and $600,000. So why is this not getting more attention and action? We believe factors include a limited awareness and understanding of the threat, And many victims of ransomware wish to keep the incident confidential due to fear of legal ramifications or public perception. With that in mind, we're extremely grateful to have a representative from an agency we serve on today to share his experience. I'd like to introduce Deputy Jeff Fox with Vigo County, Indiana Sheriff's Office. Jeff, first, welcome, and thank you for joining us to share your experience. Would you please start by giving us a brief summary of the ransomware incident you experienced?
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for attending as well. Appreciate the opportunity to kind of share our experience. Just prior to our experience, which began on Sunday, August the 4th at about 4 a.m., our Vigo County government agency had been the victim of a ransomware attack approximately 3 weeks prior. It debilitated the county, and our particular network is isolated from the county. And so shortly after they managed that process for several weeks, then as I said, at about 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning, August the 4th, our first notification came from our dispatch center, which contacted us and our IT contractor and indicated that the CAD had gone into disconnected operation, which is rare for us. That was the first clue that we had of a problem going on. That led us to a response by our contractor who arrived at the office at about 30 minutes later to discover that all of our department servers had been infected and had encrypted all of our servers on the network. Our initial response to that was to shut all of them down immediately. And as a result of that, we had a brief interruption of 911 services in our county for about 15 minutes until we could isolate our network from the 911 system. And we're able to then return 911 services to the county. During that time, we had to basically revert back to pen and paper for our dispatch center. Our dispatch center handles about 120,000 calls for service annually, and our jail also had to resort back to pen and paper for our bookend process. And our jail has about a 500-bed operating potential. So we're a pretty fairly large and busy organization to have to kind of revert back to pen and paper. But that's what had to be done. We began to try to identify the situation at hand and determine exactly our course of action. Obviously, our first and foremost was the recognition of what had happened, whether we could isolate it and prevent it from coming any farther than it had, or whether we were going to review any conditions of ransom. We chose to review the ransom, which in this case was simply a text file that had been placed in each one of our servers with a set of email addresses that allowed us to contact the attackers if we wanted to pursue that. We chose not to do that. We were fortunate enough to have a backup on file that was offsite that for whatever reason had not been encrypted, and we began the restoration process. Almost about 24 hours later, when we were able to finally isolate and begin the restoration process. In all, it took us about 4 days to completely restore our entire operation. And during that course of time, we spoke with our county IT department, who had suffered the same attack. And in comparison, since that time, we believe they were identical in nature, had just gotten to the county before, but it was a completely separate attack. As I mentioned earlier, our networks are not connected. So in our particular case, we were able to avoid paying any types of ransom. We believe that likely our infection occurred approximately 3 months prior to the notification of our attack, and we probably were infected through some type of email process. So we felt like that all of our files and everything that were encrypted, we were able to recover with a loss of about 21 days of data total. So overall, we felt pretty fortunate, but everything that has been mentioned prior to my piece of this was exactly what we encountered and what we felt like that had occurred. So some of the solutions that are going to be discussed later on today are something that I hope everyone looks at and considers, because as it said, it can definitely happen to you. There's no question about that. And so we believe that this particular online presentation has great value, and I'll answer any of the questions about our particular event if you have any at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And again, my sincere thanks for you to share your firsthand experience. It's, I think, far more meaningful, coming from somebody such as yourself. So as much as a problem as ransomware is, we wondered, can we do more to mitigate the impact of ransomware when it strikes? And the answer is yes, we can, with business continuity management or disaster recovery. A recent IBM security report indicated that having business continuity management or a disaster recovery solution can reduce cost of an incident by an average of $280,000. And organizations that had not deployed any kind of automation experienced costs that were 95% higher than those that had. So it's clear to see that it is more important than ever to have a disaster recovery solution. While we at Caliber have an appreciation of the threat of ransomware and the potential of disaster recovery to help mitigate that threat, we also recognize that it's not our core competency. Therefore, to help us better understand both the ransomware threat and recovery solutions, we have partnered with Quorum, an industry expert specializing in instant recovery. I'd like to hand it over now to Gabe from Quorum, who will go into more detail on how ransomware can infiltrate your organization and discuss techniques for prevention and recovery. Gabe?
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, thanks, Bryce. Afternoon or morning, everybody, depending on where you're at. What we're going to talk about a little bit today is the how ransomware is going to attack you, what they really target in today's networks, because that's how that has evolved over time, how to prevent and protect yourself, and then ultimately how to recover. What I want to point out to you guys is when we dealt early on in the IT world with hackers and viruses and that type of activity, they were socially driven. They were driven to cause chaos or bring light to vulnerabilities or to make a statement. With ransomware, it's different. It is a business model. In fact, it has turned into a $5 billion a year annual revenue stream for these people, which is insane and growing every year. So how they attack is this way. They have multiple ways to get to you. As Jeff pointed out, he was done through an email. We would consider that pretty common nowadays. They do happen a lot through hacking attacks. Things like Mimikatz, which is actually a tool developed by a group that wanted to point out some vulnerabilities in Windows, and has evolved into the #1 hacker tool in the world. But by far, the biggest thing that people are going to use to attack your systems are social engineering. They're going to do things like come into your office with a Dell or an HP shirt on saying they need to get into your server room they were just sent. Things like that are common occurrences. And so the things you have to do to protect yourself have also evolved. They attack things like active processes, as Jeff pointed out, email. They don't just go after file shares like they used to. They also can attack things like your backups or your VM hosts, which means if you're running virtual machines, they don't attack the virtual machine, they attack the host it's sitting on and get all the virtual machines with one shot. So they don't even need your administrative passwords to your domain to get in. If they can get the admin password to your host, they're in. They target databases like Exchange or SQL, those type of important critical files that can have much more mass effect than just files in a file share. Or they can attack things like Active Directory and cause a situation where they just lock everybody out of your network. So how do you protect yourself? It comes in this form of walls, almost like an onion. On the outer layer, you have things like physical access, your firewalls at your perimeter, that kind of thing. On your servers, you're going to have antivirus or endpoint protection type software. In your applications, you're going to have multi-factor authentication, application security. As we work our way in towards the green, security awareness training is a critical cog, and I encourage all of you to up your security awareness or refresh your security awareness training, because that is the #1 way that they attack. And then hiring firms to come and do third-party audits of your security awareness. Test your employees, test your groups, audit your processes, make sure that they stand up to those tests to give you that peace of mind. And even with all of these walls or all these perimeters that you've kind of built around your infrastructure, as Bryce pointed out, eventually you're going to get hit. Someone will make a mistake somewhere, leave a password somewhere. It happens. And so your final step is a recovery strategy. Now, as Jeff pointed out in his example to you guys, his recovery strategy took him about 4 days to get back up. With what Quorum offers, we use a zero trust business continuity strategy. And what that means is we'll take your servers, be they physical servers, virtual machines, your shares, your SANs, and we can protect those onto the Quorum solution. And we keep the Quorum solution, even though it's living in your network, we keep it completely separate. So we provide all of the functionality you need to instantly recover. So once we back up those servers, we can actually make a bootable copy that can be recovered on the appliance. So instead of waiting 4 days to recover those files, you can recover them instantly. And it kind of works like this. We don't care if your servers are on-premise, physical servers, virtual servers, or even servers in the public cloud. We back them up onto the OnQ. We use a secure operating system. We do our own penetration tests and dual encryption on everything we do. We are a separate stack, which means we don't rely on your SAN. We don't rely on things like DNS or Active Directory or anything else in order for us to recover those servers. And because we do that, and we're an independent backup chain, there's no way for the antivirus or for the ransomware to turn us off. So one of the things we've seen in the networks is they'll actually disable the backup services. So they'll disable the little agent or the service that's running to take your backups. Well, if they do that, it actually alerts us because we have an active communication with that service, and the OnQ can send out an alert saying, hey, the service is down, I can't take a backup. So we have all of these kinds of safeguards in place to make sure that when you need to recover, you're going to be able to recover. And then that recovery time objective, instead of being 4 days for your tapes or your files or your servers to get rebuilt, is instantly. And when I mean instant, I really mean the time it takes to boot the machine is your recovery time. So we take all of your critical servers like your 911 systems, and we basically build a virtual replica that's ready to run at a moment's notice. There we go. And that's really how Quorum works in a nutshell. So we've taken ourselves out of the chain from the backup and recovery solution standpoint and created a secure environment in order for you to recover. Now, we have all kinds of options, whether you recover locally, recover remotely, recover to a cloud, recover to Caliber. All of these functionalities exist, but in all of these solutions, we've kept the single focus on secure, easy to recover products. So with that all being said, we wanted to take a few minutes, and obviously if you have any questions, reach out to Aaron Wolford. His information's here on the screen, but we wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions where you have, people that have experienced it, you have experts in your industry as well as experts in disaster recovery here to answer those questions. So does anyone have any questions that they'd like to post? Please put them in that question area, and we'll take the time to do that. We kind of rushed through a lot of our content because we wanted to take time for these questions, and we wanted to make sure we were sensitive to the 30-minute window we gave for this presentation. So any questions that you have, please let us know. Devin will recite them out and pose them to whoever needs to respond.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Gabe and Bryce. We do have a few questions, and I think we will start off with Bryce here. It sounds like we have a question for Caliber. Bryce, one of our attendees writes in, I don't have antivirus software installed on my servers, and Caliber recommended against installing antivirus software. Should I install it? Why or why not?
Sure. Thanks, Evan. Good question. So the reason why we typically don't recommend backup software on the servers is because of the impact that it can have on the performance of the system, whether we're talking about our services side or if we're talking even about the database. And some of that goes into the details of how antivirus software works. A lot of times it supports multiple kinds of types of scans, including like an in-memory process scan, a on-demand file scan, as well as a on-file access scan. And some of these types of scans can cause really significant performance impact on a server, on a database application, right? You think of all the reads and writes. Depending on how that antivirus software has been designed, it can actually bog down the whole machine when the application is just trying to work. So as far as if you don't have the antivirus software, how do you protect yourself? A lot of it is just not giving access, right? Really being careful about who you control or who you grant access to on that server or servers, as the case may be, to make sure that a limited number of people can get on those servers, that you need a certain set of credentials that would not be shared with, say, your typical workstation or your unprivileged user account. And then the other thing is use the server only for its purpose. Right? Avoid checking email, browsing the web when you're on a server that provides a critical service. So the reason why we don't recommend the antivirus software on the servers specifically is because we do know that certain variants of that create performance problems that are very difficult to track down.
Great, thanks for that, Bryce. Gabe, we'll transition to you. Looks like we have a question for Quorum. Is it possible for ransomware to infect Quorum backups, and has it ever happened?
Well, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's very unlikely, and it has never happened. The way we take our backups is even if the backup data itself was encrypted, it would get copied over, but it wouldn't be able to proliferate the way we have the snapshot set up in the system. So it would still be isolated to that snapshot, and we could go to an earlier snapshot to recover. That's one of the reasons why we keep everything in the OnQ ecosystem separate from production. We don't rely on the same storage. We don't rely on the same authentication means from your production network. So we stay very separate and secure. And then as far as getting infiltrated by, very smart software, the way we have everything locked down security-wise, we have firewalls set up on all of the tools, so only certain ports are open to talk to certain protocols and everything is handshaked and authenticated through that process. It becomes very unlikely that a Quorum solution would ever be hacked by this means.
Great. Moving along with another ransomware question for you, Gabe. What if I have ransomware for over 30 days before it strikes? How do I recover, and how much time is needed?
It's a great question. So the OnQ is designed itself to take about 30 days of storage snapshots. So it goes for 30 days just on regular daily backups or hourly backups, however frequently you're doing it. But beyond that, we have what we call the archive vault. And what the archive vault can do is it can actually freeze snapshots at points in time. So your weekly, your monthly, quarterly, annual type backups are actually frozen on the OnQ and retained. So if we have to go back to further, like in Jeff's case, over 90 days backwards in time, those snapshots would still be there. And because of the way we store them, they are still instantly recoverable. So it's not like you just have file level recovery at that point. You can actually boot that server from that earlier point in time before you had the ransomware attack.
Thanks, Gabe. Bryce, another question for you and Caliber. Is cloud or hosted software more or less likely to experience ransomware compared to on-premise software?
Yes. Generally speaking, hosted or cloud-based software solutions are safer than on-premise installations. The reason is because to do security right, it's expensive. To have all these layers of backups, to have the experts that can configure the software to in the network environment to what's appropriate for just that solution is difficult. It takes a very specialized set of skills, and so it can be expensive. And so when you go to a hosted or a cloud provider, what you're getting is an economy of scale where that provider can protect the information. They can make a larger investment because they're sharing it. It's not just each organization, each customer of a cloud product that has to fund that. It is all of them together collectively funding it. And also, typically, cloud solutions focus on providing one specific service, one specific solution. Some of them can be whole machines that are virtualized, but oftentimes, cloud-based software in particular, it's focused on providing that one solution. And when you know it's just one solution, there's a lot more you can do in terms of security and reducing the surface, the threat surface that an attacker would be able to access, right? Fewer mechanisms, fewer holes in the firewall, so to speak. So that's where a cloud-based solution can have a benefit compared to an on-premise where you've got multiple applications, each one that has their own needs inside your environment, and you have to accommodate each one of those needs. It just gives you a larger exposure. So generally speaking, cloud and hosted is more secure than on-premise.
Thanks for that, Bryce. We have about 3 minutes left, so I think we have time for one more question. Question again for you, Gabe. Do I need to call support when I need to recover from ransomware, and how easy is it to do it myself?
Yeah, so Quorum's taken a lot of pains to create a process that we often say that, our boss can actually do. And so what we've done is created, it's basically a one-click recovery. So they would come in and they would boot up those servers and very easily recover them in a matter of minutes. And so hopefully you don't have to call support when you have that, but we do have world-class support 24/7 in the event that you ever did need to call them for any questions you might be having during a ransomware attack, and we're more than happy to help in those situations. We often get calls from customers mostly because they're in panic mode, and it's just the peace of mind of us going, no worries, no problem, click this button, okay, we're good. That really helps alleviate a lot of that pain that they really feel when they're doing a ransomware event. And we've walked customers through several where we've done exactly that, help them recover, help them get their business running, and then taken the time to help them get back onto their production platforms. So it's a very repeatable process for us, and all of our agents are really trained to handle exactly that type of situation. So when you ask the question, do they need to call support? No, absolutely not. They are fully capable of standing up these machines, but if they want to, we're happy to help.
Great, thanks for that, Gabe. So we are coming up at the top of the half hour here. I do want to thank everyone for joining us today. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to Bryce, Gabe, or myself following the session. We will get to any unanswered questions as well and be able to answer those. Again, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.
Thanks again.